Today on the Word Preacher Podcast, miracles, a new ordinance, and that which is unspeakable. I'm Brett Jensen, and this is the Word Preacher Podcast. All right, our Come Follow Me curriculum brings us to 3 Nephi chapters 17 through 19, discussing the other items that Jesus taught to the Nephites when he appeared after his resurrection. The first topic that I would like to talk about is the miracles that he performed. After hearing an incredible sermon, Jesus told the multitude that it might be good for them to ponder the things that he had taught and prepare their minds for additional instruction the coming day. The Nephites did not like the idea of Jesus leaving, and seeing their love for him, he took compassion. These are verses 7 through 9 in our reading. Have ye any that are sick among you? Bring them hither. Have ye any that are lame or blind or halt or maimed or leprous, or that are withered, or that are deaf, or that are afflicted in any manner? Bring them hither, and I will heal them. For I have compassion upon you. My bowels are filled with mercy. For I perceive that ye desire that I should show unto you what I have done unto your brethren at Jerusalem. For I see that your faith is sufficient that I should heal you. And it came to pass that when he had thus spoken, all the multitude with one accord did go forth with their sick and their afflicted, and their lame, and with their blind, and with their dumb, and with all them that were afflicted in any manner. And he did heal them, every one, as they were brought forth unto him. All right. So let's talk about this concept. Faith is sufficient that I should heal you. Sometimes that can be a little tricky to decipher. Does this mean that those who do not recover from sickness or disability or injury, since Jesus Christ's power is the same today as it was then, does that mean that these individuals who do not recover are lacking in faith? And the answer to that, I think, is a solid sort of. You might think no, but it's more like sort of. There's a couple of perspectives to think about with this concept. First, there are plenty of people who have lots of faith who are called upon to endure incredible hardship. So, in some cases, it's not a lack of faith at all. Jesus allowed his own apostles that he gave the church direction to, had them leading his church in Judea and Galilee. They endured terrible persecution and essentially lost everything that they had tried to build. And I am certainly not going to be among those who suggest that Peter, James, and John might have been successful had they tried harder. I don't think that's true. And I think the same is true for many pioneers who endured persecutions and hardships that required immense sacrifices. In fact, for many of these saints, their hardships represented the magnitude of their faith. It wasn't lacking faith that caused them to have to endure affliction. At the same time, there are many alive today, and I would include myself among this number, who have a tendency to complain when things aren't going well. The pride that caused Laman and Lemuel to declare that the people of Jerusalem were righteous as they complained about their hardships, and the envy that caused the children of Israel to seek to be like other nations, in having great kings with palaces and wealth, instead of judges like Samuel the prophet. These sorts of sins and tendencies, they persist today in us. Now, sometimes the reason that we may not see the power of God in our lives is because deep down, we don't believe that He will help us. If you pray to God for answers without being open to receive them, or believing that you can receive them, or that He will give them, how on earth can you expect to hear the voice of the Lord declare something like, "Thy faith hath made thee whole," which was typical of His healings in Judea and Galilee? Let's not pretend that we deserve anything from the Lord. Let's do what He asks and endure whatever He requires of us until He decides that we deserve something, if He ever does, because we really don't. Miracles come at the will of God, and faith sufficient to be healed means believing that He makes the decisions. All right, a new ordinance. Let's go to some reading. This is in 3 Nephi chapter 18 for 7 verses. And it came to pass that Jesus commanded His disciples that they should bring forth some bread and wine unto Him. And while they were gone for bread and wine, He commanded the multitude that they should sit themselves down upon the earth. And when the disciples had come with bread and wine, He took of the bread and brake and blessed it, and gave unto the disciples, and commanded that they should eat. And when they had eaten and were filled, He commanded that they should give unto the multitude. And when the multitude had eaten and were filled, He said unto the disciples, Behold, there shall one be ordained among you, and to him will I give power that he shall break bread, and bless it, and give it unto the people of my church, unto all those who believe and be baptized in my name. And this shall ye always observe to do, even as I have done, even as I have broken bread, and blessed it, and given it unto you. And this shall ye do in remembrance of my body, which I have shown unto you. And it shall be a testimony unto the Father, that ye do always remember me. And if ye do always remember me, ye shall have my Spirit to be with you. So here we have the implementation of the sacrament of the Lord's Supper. Sacrifices, animal sacrifices, if we contrast what was replaced, they looked forward to the time when the lamb would be lost. And it was good to have something new to recognize how Jesus overcame loss. Instead of giving up of ourselves as a part of the ordinance of animal sacrifice, the new ordinance would be to take into ourselves that which He gave us. Instead of being able to say, look what I gave to the Lord, the sacrament has us say instead, look what I received from the Lord. The focus of either the sacrifice of the animal or the sacrament is the same. It is still on the one who transforms the loss into a gain, who makes the sacrifice into something that can be used positively. The one with the power to transform bad into good and good into worthy. A person who receives the sacrament ought not believe, oh, now I'm good, any more than a person who offered an animal sacrifice before the implementation of the sacrament of the Lord's Supper. Because it's not like you take the sacrament and then you're good. Jesus is very clear about this. Here's some reading in 3 Nephi chapter 18, verses 18 through 22. Behold, verily, verily, I say unto you, ye must watch and pray always, lest ye enter into temptation. For Satan desireth to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. Therefore ye must pray unto the Father in my name. And whatsoever ye shall ask the Father in my name, which is right, believing that ye shall receive, behold, it shall be given unto you. Pray in your families unto the Father, always in my name, that your wives and your children may be blessed. And behold, ye shall meet together oft, and ye shall not forbid any man from coming unto you when ye shall meet together, but suffer them that they may come unto you, and forbid them not. All right, so this ordinance that we are to meet together oft, to observe, that we are to pray over, to receive these blessings, it's a sign that we are willing to take Christ into our lives, that his flesh and blood is not just a concept that we think about occasionally. We want it to be a part of us. We want him to be inside of what guides and influences all of our choices. Thus, a person who partakes of the sacrament is under more obligation to watch and pray. So after introducing the sacrament, of course it was right that Jesus instruct people to watch and pray lest they enter into temptation, and to warn them that Satan was still seeking to overthrow them. All right. That which is unspeakable. In the process of ministering to the Nephites, Jesus prayed, and some of the things that he prayed cannot be spoken or written, which is kind of an interesting concept. Let's go to some reading. This is 3 Nephi chapter 17, verses 16 through 18. And after this manner do they bear record. The eye hath never seen, neither hath the ear heard before so great and marvelous things as we saw and heard Jesus speak unto the Father. And no tongue can speak, neither can there be written by any man, neither can the hearts of men conceive so great and marvelous things as we both saw and heard Jesus speak. And no one can conceive of the joy which filled our souls at the time we heard him pray for us unto the Father. And it came to pass that when Jesus had made an end of praying unto the Father, he arose. But so great was the joy of the multitude that they were overcome. It's kind of difficult to imagine this thing that is so great it can't be it can't be written, it can't be spoken, and no man can really conceive of this. And to think that about this situation, to give it a little perspective, it reminded me of my personal experience being called as a new missionary and attending the Missionary Training Center in Provo, Utah. I was around many other missionaries who had already been there for 3 or more weeks already. And they knew where everything was. They understood the schedules and the processes, and they knew a bit more about pitfalls to avoid. Some of these missionaries looked down on those of us who were new, who had no idea what we were getting into. sort of to be expected, because after I had been there a couple weeks, I sort of began to feel similarly about newer missionaries. So innocent and filled with enthusiasm, they had no idea what they were getting into. Um, uh, of course, that was kind of ridiculous because this cycle repeated again when I arrived in the mission field. Experienced missionaries knew that I was totally green and did not really understand, even though I had been through training and I understood the material I was teaching and I had a good knowledge of the scriptures. There were a lot of things about the processes of being a missionary that I had yet to learn. This process is not reserved to missionary work. It is repeated multiple times in jobs that I've had, where I'm the new guy and I know nothing, and then later, after I have experience, other new people come, and I see that from the other point of view, and I think, oh, you have no idea what's waiting for you. At the same time, I had no idea. I was in that same situation myself. And eventually, at some point, it occurred enough in a cycle that I grew to realize those who seemed like they had all the answers, including myself, the ones who had been there and gained experience, really only had acquired a few tricks to be a little more efficient in a very narrow field of understanding. There is so much that we do not know. Acquiring a couple tricks does not an expert make. Archaeologists, when we think about like the most brilliant minds that we have in modern learning and study and science and history, archaeologists still piece together little fragments of things just to make educated guesses about life in places, some of them that were only relatively used a short time ago. Futurists with great understanding of technology and trends use that understanding to make, again, educated guesses about what life will be like for us in the future. Scientists of numerous disciplines study careful information about what we can observe around us right now, and still have only scratched the very surface of learning about the natural world, whether these are physical forces, whether they're behaviors of organisms, whether it's what the surface of things look like, under the ocean, the conditions on planets near and far. There are so many things that we have not even considered. Our consistent lack of ability to see past, present, and future should create in us an understanding that we are not so much further than a young missionary in the MTC, than a noob learning the ropes at a job, or a student just getting started on their education. We cannot even process the volume of what we don't know. And with this context, no wonder Jesus explained that we should become as a little child. Jesus loved children, and of course he still does. For the Nephites, he gathered the little ones of the Nephites and blessed them one by one individually. A lack of perfect understanding of peer-reviewed papers, or of scientific trends, or of observations that have been recorded throughout years, was not a problem for these young children even to understand good and bad. Jesus commands us to be like them. The phrase that he used as he told the Nephites, "Behold your little ones," It wasn't just a commandment for them as they watched angelic fire and power encircle their beloved young. It is a command for us to see how happy and loving and forgiving, how optimistic and enthusiastic and good a person is capable of being without having to know all of the answers, to understand that the answers that matter most are available to all of us intuitively, that they already have a good understanding of many important things, even if they don't have a lot of worldly knowledge. In the end, when we think about how complex good and evil are, no one is capable of codifying all of that. You cannot write enough laws to enumerate all the bad things or all of the good things that we should be doing. But we can still appreciate things that are too complex to be fully written or spoken. In the latter days, as we prepare for the return of Jesus Christ, it would do us good to focus on all that we have received from him. A grateful man has peace. Perhaps, as the second coming nears, we will hold some of the promised miracles that will be seen. We will see them. We will experience them. But whether or not we actually do, we could all stand to improve our faith, to watch and pray, so that we are ready to receive his miracles. We appreciate all the support for the Word Preacher podcast. Next week, we will be looking at General Conference, as the material for this week is scheduled to take 2 weeks. It won't hurt you to study this individually and with your family in preparation for messages from living prophets and apostles. Of course, as always, fight on.